Hello everyone and welcome back to PM Studios Photoshop Tutorials. Today I'm going to be teaching you how to do a art scene. We're going to be creating a space scene with a planet and a sun. A lot of this is based off of artistic liberty. It took me watching 2 or 3 tutorials myself to kind of get my own style formed and get end products that I'm pleased with. So I hope that you walk away with this knowing that this is not a finite set of rules, and I hope you go and research other video tutorials as well on this subject if it interests you, and make your own style. Because that's really what art is about, is finding your own style and making art that you enjoy making instead of just walking through the steps that somebody else told you to do. So the first thing we're going to do is going to go ahead and create a new document, and the dimensions are going to be 1920 by 1080 with a resolution of 400 pixels per inch. Here's the thing to keep in mind when you're making digital imaging, is that the higher pixels per inch you have, the higher quality the image is going to be in the long run. Once you produce this image, or once I produce this image and save it to a JPEG, the quality of the image is going to be astounding compared to the old text effect tutorials that I was doing when I first started this. And that's really what you want to do with artists, because with art people really want to zoom in and see, hey, what does that look like? They really want to pay attention to the finer details. With lower resolutions, you really can't do that. So go ahead and push OK, and that's going to create a new blank document for us. Go ahead and go to the fill bucket and go ahead and fill it with black. Make sure it's your foreground color at first, and if it's not, you can push D to reset your foreground and background colors to the defaults, which is black is foreground, white is background, and then you can fill it. So the next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go on the internet and find yourself a texture that kind of looks like the surface of a planet. I've already chosen one. It's this rust texture. You can kind of see it. It looks a lot like Mars, kind of. Not really, but it has a similar tone to Mars. Very rusty, very orange. I'm going to be using this one, but you're more than welcome to go and search. If you want to make a water planet or an ice planet, all you'd have to do is inside your search bar. All you'd have to do is click on. You'd have to type in water texture or ice texture or snow texture even, and then you'd get a long list of textures. Make sure that the texture size is bigger than the image you're making so that you have plenty to work with. It's always better in Photoshop if more is better instead of less is more, So because you can decrease the size without any loss of quality, but you can't increase the size without loss of quality, if that makes any sense. So I'm going to go ahead and minimize this and bring in the image. Whoopsies. I'm going to select that. Cancel that. Don't place. Let's see what I can do. Go to New. How about we just open it normally? Let's go to File and then Open. And we're going to go to Desktop like it is right there. Then go to Rust. That's going to bring in the image. Now the first thing you want to do with your image is, as long as it's something that doesn't require any photo editing itself, we're going to click on the corner here, hold down Shift so that it creates a perfect circle. We're going to drag it out to somewhere around 2 or 3 pixels away from the bottom of the picture. This is purely up to you, and we don't want to cut it. Whoops. We just want to set it so that we can drag it around, and then you want to set it wherever you want so that you feel that you're making a good image or a good surface. So we've got some mountainous terrain. If we were looking at this like a planet, then we've got some plains here and some deep crevices, and that's all based off of light theory. So the deeper you get, the darker it gets, and the higher you get, the lighter it gets. So there's some obvious cliffing right here, and there's some obvious caverning right there. So this is going to make a pretty interesting surface. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to Filter, Distort, Spherize. Push OK. We don't have to mess with any of the settings, and that's going to kind of bubble this out. It's hard to see right now, so let's go ahead and cut it out of the picture and then paste it into here. First thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to push Control-T to transfer the picture, or transform the picture. Hold down Shift again and resize it to something where you think you can work with it a little bit better. So that's going to be about mine. Click the cursor button or any of the options to apply the transform. And as you can see, it really did spherize that, and it kind of looks like more of a sphere now. But it doesn't look like a planet yet. There's quite a few things missing. So the next step we're going to do is we're going to go over here to the layers box, and we're going to push Control-G to group it up. Alternatively, you can click on this folder right here, and it'll group it. Now, since we're going to be making 2 planets here, let's go ahead and rename the group to Planet. And then we can create a new layer outside of that. Delete that. Create a new layer outside of that, and we can group that up, and we'll call this Sun. Alright, so we can minimize this and not worry about it for later, until later. And the next thing we're going to do, click on the planet group, and we're going to create 3 new layers. Now keep in mind that these 3 layers are applying to textures that are really bright like this one. If you have a relatively darker texture, you're going to want to get rid of one of the layers completely. So you'd only create 2 layers. But the first thing I'm going to do, after that, we're going to Control-click the thumbnail of layer 1, or whatever your planet surface is on, and that's going to highlight the entire surface. And then we're going to go to our fill bucket with black selected as the foreground, and we're going to fill all 3 of the layers we created, or 2 if you have a darker texture. And with that done, we're going to deselect it by pushing Control-D, and we're going to set the layer 3 to screen, then layer 4 to overlay, which is going to get it some extreme darkening, as you can see. So without any of the layers, it's this. This is going to be our shadow and kind of our atmosphere layer. And then this is going to darken it so that it looks a little more extreme. Because I don't know about you, but this doesn't really look like it's going to make a good planet. It looks too bright, too normal, you know, it looks too much like rust. So this kind of gives it kind of a volcanic, grungy look, like it's been sitting in the heat of the sun and it's, you know, it's molten. So go back to layer 3, or whatever your atmosphere layer is, the screen layer, and double click on the layer styles, or double click on the layer to pull up the layer styles. And we're going to go ahead and add an inner shadow, outer glow, and inner glow. Now to better see what we're doing with this, go ahead and push OK to apply all those, and we're going to go ahead and hide the overlay layer first, so that we can see what we're doing with the shadow. So with the inner shadow, you can do it as black as if you like, but basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to create the shadow that the surface of the sun casts on the side of the planet that's facing it. So we want the color of the shadow to be the same kind of color, maybe a little bit darker, as what we're going to be making the sun. I'm going to go ahead and set the angle as 27, because that's the rough angle that I intend to put the sun at. And we're going to increase the distance pretty high up there, and we're going to increase the size. And as you can tell, we have the sharp edge right here, and as we increase the size, it's going to start blending it into the planet's surface. And you want to go ahead and put that all the way up to 250, regardless of what color it is and how hard it is to see. And if you need to see it more, you can always just step it up a little bit more. But I'm going to go ahead and put mine back down to 95-ish, and you'll see why. We're going to do outer glow. We're going to set the outer glow to somewhere around the realm of the same color that the shadow was, only we're going to make it lighter. We're going to increase the spread. You don't want to go crazy with the spread here. 6 or 7 with a 400 pixels per inch image is probably going to be good. If you're doing 350, you probably want to do 15 or so. That's one thing to always keep in mind, is that the higher pixels per inch you're working with, the lower the numbers have to be. Otherwise, it just gets way too extreme really fast. So that looks about right. If you didn't see what I did, I bumped the spread up to 6%, and then I put the pixels up to 32. Then the inner glow, This is one thing that we're going to want to do right away, is we're going to want to go to the outer glow, and in the color selector we want to copy the hex code for the color that we had handpicked, so that way we don't have to try to re-handpick the exact same color, because there's always human error with that. So bump up the choke to about 7%, and then step up the inner glow. As you can see, there's no inner glow, and there's some. We don't want it too extreme. 15 to 20 pixels will probably be sufficient or more than enough, depending on what you feel is appropriate. So with that, we've already got that finished, and we can reapply the dramatic grittiness that we had earlier. And then we're going to want to create a new layer, and just a new blank layer that's right over layer 3, and then select both of them and click on Merge Layers. If you right click, I don't know if you can see that. It's below the Clear Layer Styles and above the Merge Visible. You just want to do Merge Layers. That's going to merge it. We're going to want to change the blend mode to screen once again, and you'll see why we do that after we finish working with layer 5. So moving up to layer 5, we're going to go to Filter, Blur, and we're going to go to Gaussian Blur. Now, I already have this preset from a previous try, but you're going to want to fiddle around with the Gaussian blur yourself. Find something that works for you. You don't want to overdo it, but you kind of want the edges of the planet to be visible under the shadow. Not to such an extent where you can see like three quarters of the planet, but you want it to be somewhere around here, and it has to have really soft edges like this. If you don't, then it gets kind of complicated later on, and you have to reapply the layer and stuff. So we're just going to hold down Shift after we pushed Control T to transform. And we're going to drag it out so that we get the shadow covering the parts of the planet where the sun isn't going to hit. So this is just purely a matter of choice. As you can see, I'm trying to adjust this so that this back side of the planet is completely covered in shadow, and as the sun hits this side, we're kind of seeing less and less the planet as it goes into the corners. So that's about what I want it to be. Go ahead and click Apply. Now here's the fun part. We're going to go ahead and Control click Layer 5. Make sure that it is the Layer 5. It should be leaning off of the edge of the planet like mine is right now. The last time I tried to record this, I Control clicked the layer below it, and it was selecting this. Couldn't possibly understand why it was not doing it right. So with that layer selected, we're going to go down to our layer 6, which is our shadows layer mixed in with a blank layer, and we're going to go ahead and push Delete. And as you can see, that got rid of all of the glow on the planet, all of the atmospheric glow on the backside where the shadow lies. So we're going to push Control D to deselect that. Then we're going to Control click the thumbnail of layer 1 so we select the planet. Then we're going to do Control Shift I. I know this is a lot of commands to take down in one swing, but what Control Shift I does is it, or Command Shift I for those of you who are on Mac, is it selects the inverse of everything that you originally had selected. So when we control click the thumbnail, we had the planet selected. When we push Control Shift I, we had everything but the planet selected. So with that, we want to click on layer 5, and we want to push Delete again. And that's going to get rid of the excess shadow, which is also what we want to do. And then Control D again to deselect everything. And as you can see, there's a bit of a rim right here. We might have to adjust that. So, there we go. Okay. And the reason why that happened is because my mouse double clicks itself every now and then. So, it may not happen to you. You don't need to worry about it. Alright, now with that selected, we're going to want to go down to layer 1 again. Going to go to Filter. We're going to Render Lighting Effects. And with this selected, we want to move the item so that it is in the center of the planet. You may have to expand it so that you have a general idea of where you're going. And decrease this again, because you don't want it so extreme. And then in the same angle-ish that we're going to be putting the sun, we want to point the spotlight in. We're not going to mess with any of the settings. Go ahead and push OK. That's going to create it. That's a little bit too much. So I'm going to go filter, render. And again, this is more of a personal preference than anything. So if it's too dark, move it closer. If it's too bright, move it further away. It's a general rule of thumb. So that looks like it's about it. And the one thing we want to do is we want to adjust the fill of layer 5 down between 75 and 95%, I believe it is. I usually go with somewhere around 80 and 85%. That's about good. So there we go. And now that's going to be acceptable for now. So let's go ahead and close that out. We've got to create another new image. Go ahead and push OK. It's going to have the same settings. And fill it with black. Actually, no, let's not fill it with black. What we can do is we can go in here and create a new layer. Yeah, let's go ahead and leave it the way it is. Go to our elliptical marquee tool, and then do the same thing we did originally, which was go to the corner, select our big circle. It doesn't really matter. Cut that out. Oops. Alright, go back in here, paste that, Control-T it. We're going to shrink it down. And being that how dark this planet is, we want the sun to be relatively small, like just a glint in the distance, because this planet is going to be very far away from the sun with how dark it is. Go ahead and apply the transformation, and we can move this down into the sun selection. Okay, so we're only going to need 2 layers for this. Control-click, and we're going to go fill this in with black. Actually, you know what? No. Deselect everything. Let's just go into the layer style settings right here real quick, and we're going to do the same thing: inner shadow, outer glow, and inner glow. Change the inner shadow to whatever we wanted the color of the sun to be. So this is going to be kind of a darkish yellow. We're going to do distance. You want to set the distance pretty high on the sun. So we're going to have a really hot spot right there. And we can actually decrease this a little bit. And then step that up. Okay. Yeah, so we're going to have a bit of a hot spot right there at the front. Go ahead and push OK. Outer glow. Inner glow isn't going to be so much of an issue. So we can just step up the choke, increase that. You won't be able to tell the inner glow very much. The outer glow is something that you're going to want to fool around with. The outer glow on the sun is going to be a little bit larger than the outer glow on the planet, because it's the one emitting the light. So with that, that looks about right. We might want to, whoops, get the cursor tool first off. Then select the entire planet, and this is where we're going to want to move it so that it's kind of in the right spot. There we go. Okay, so delete these 2 unused layers. Minimize that. And then the last thing you want to do is you want to create a new layer inside the sun selection. Drop it below. And we want to go to Filter, Render, Lens Flares. Oops. Fill it with black first. That's my mistake. Alright, so now we're going to go to Filter, Render, Lens Flares. And here, we're just going to go ahead and set it up in the corner, because obviously that's where the sun is, that's where we want the lens flare to be. And depending on how bright you want the sun to be, you can set the brightness. We're going to put this one at about 90% because of how far away it is. I'm going to push OK, and there we go. And now, just for added pleasure, we can move this up and then select the blend mode to lighten. And ta-da! Alright. I hope you guys have enjoyed this tutorial. That's about it for today. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. Otherwise, I would love to see your art that you make with this tutorial and any other Planet tutorials that you've watched after this one or before this one. So please feel free to submit links to me, PM me links to your Planetary art, and I will be sure to give you kudos and definitely thank you for watching my tutorial. So I hope to see you guys next time. Have a good day.